In this worksheet, we're going to work on using cell references in our formulas. And there's actually three types of cell addresses that you can use. One is called relative, the second one is absolute, and the third is mixed reference. In the worksheet you see in front of you, we're going to use what we call relative cell addressing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to cell C21, and we're just going to add the income from Diane and Glenn. So it's a simple addition formula. So you start with the equal sign, and we're going to go to cell C19 plus C20. Now what you see in front of you is you do see the formula, but notice C19 and C20, there's no dollar signs as part of the cell address. This is what we call relative cell address. So I'm going to just go ahead and press the enter key. Now instead of recreating that formula 11 more times, I'm just going to go ahead and select the cell that contains the formula, and you can see that that's the cell that contains the formula. I'm going to go to the lower right hand corner of the cell and grab the fill handle. The fill handle is a little square in the lower right hand corner. This is great for copying to adjacent cells. So I'm just going to left click and drag it across through December and let go, and then I'm just going to double click, and you can see that the formula is still adding, but instead of using C19 and C20, it's using D19 plus D20. So this is called relative cell address, which means it's using the cells that's relative to where you copy the formula to, not where you copied it from. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to cell C32, and we'll use the AutoSum function, but we're just going to add the expenses. And then again, I'm going to use the fill handle. I'm going to select the cell that contains the formula or function, go to the lower right hand corner of the cell, click and drag it across to the adjacent cells, and again it's using the same function, but now I'm using cells D22 through D31 instead of, when I originally created this formula, C22 to C31. We'll go ahead and do the subtraction here. The equal sign will take the total income minus the total expenses. And then again, you can see that that formula is just a simple subtraction. It's using cells C21 and C32, but when I copy it across using the fill handle, it's now using D21 and D32. So it's using the cell addresses that's relative to where you copied it to. Let's go ahead and work on the absolute reference. So I'm going to go to the next worksheet, and what we have here is we have this looks like sales, so we have some bonus payout here. So these sales representatives, this is what they sold for the month of November, and what's going to happen is they're going to get a bonus if they sold over $60,000 that month. But what we'd like to do is take their sales amount and multiply it by the bonus rate. Now notice the bonus rate is down in the cell by itself. All right, well, there's two things we have to do. One, we have to determine whether or not they get a bonus. And two, if they do get a bonus, we need to do the formula that takes their sales times the bonus rate. So we're also going to use the if function on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the Formulas tab. And we'll go ahead and go to Logical If. And if you haven't hit this part yet in the book, the if function is a function that contains three arguments. The first one says logical test, and that's the condition that you're testing for. If this exists, then the value of true is what to do if that condition does exist. So you might want a word to show up that says they get a bonus, or you may want a formula to be calculated. And if value if false is what you would want to have happen or show up in the cell if the condition is false. Now with this if function, even though you have three arguments, the first one is the only one that's required, and you can tell because the name of that argument, logical test, is in bold. The reason why the second and the third one are not is because if you don't include anything in these two arguments, it's just going to display the word true or the word false, and you can see down below where it's giving you a description, and if it's omitted, what it will show as its returned value. So let me go ahead and click in the logical test argument text box, and let's go ahead and do this function. If sales is greater than 60,000, and I like to say the condition that I'm looking for and click on the cells at the same time. So if B4, which is the sales for the first person, is greater than 60,000. Now keep in mind this person's sales is not, but the condition is still the same. So if that is true, then we're going to take their sales and we're going to multiply it by whatever the bonus rate is. Now instead of typing in 3%, we're going to click on a cell that contains 3%, because if this changes next month, we want to be able to make the change in one place instead of redo the whole formula or edit the formula. What we need to do though is we need to press the F4 function key once we go to a cell in our formula that needs to be absolute. absolute means no matter where we copy this formula to, it will absolutely go to cell B15 when Excel reads this part of the formula. So this is really going to be a time saver. Now, if it's false, we just want a 0 to show up. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And obviously this person does not have sales greater than 60,000, so they get nothing. Let's use the fill handle and we'll copy it down. Looks like the second person, same thing. It's using relative referencing, all right, and absolute referencing. Now remember, the second part is if the condition was true, but the condition was false, so it's going to do the false argument, which is display 0. Looks like this person's logical test here is B6 greater than 60,000. Yes, it is. So that means the condition is true, so it's going to take whatever in cell B6 and multiply it by what's in B15. Now the nice thing about copying or making B15 absolute is no matter where I copy it, it will absolutely go to cell B15 to do that part of the function if the condition is true. Here's the other nice thing about absolute referencing. Let's say next month it changes. Boss is real jolly there and gives you 5%. So all you have to do is change the bonus rate in the one cell, and you see that the values automatically change as well. So you're not having to come back up here and edit the formula by having the cell address reference and having it absolute. You can just change it one time and it automatically changes your answers. So absolute referencing will be indicated with the dollar signs in front of both the column heading and the row heading. And just by pressing the F4 function key several times, you can toggle through absolute referencing, mixed referencing, which in this case means that the row number 15 is absolute but the column is not. Press the F4 key a third time, it'll be the column heading but not the row. Press the F4 key a fourth time, it goes back to relative cell address or relative cell referencing. And I'm just going to press the F4 function key so both the column and the row are absolute, which means it's going to absolutely lock in this particular cell. Let's go ahead and do the third type of cell referencing, which is mixed. Now I've already done this for you, and we'll delete this and redo it again, but what's happening here is we're taking 12 months and we're going to be doing a savings per month for 12 months of $500. And this is what we should have saved up at the end of 12 months. Well, it's the same formula whether it's 12, 24, or 36, and whether we're going to be depositing 500, 600, 700, and so on. So what I want to be able to do here is I want to be able to create this formula one time, copy it across and down. Now, this is what we're doing here. We're using actually what we call mixed referencing, which means only one part of the cell address is absolute, the other part is not. So the part that is absolute in this cell address is column A. The part that's absolute in this cell address of the formula is row 4. Now, why is column A absolute? Because if you look at the number of months, they're all sharing one thing in common. They have the same cell address as far as column. But if you look at the rows, they're in different rows. So it's whatever part of their cell address that is the same, that's what gets the dollar sign. Same thing with the numbers going across the top. These are all in the same row, row 4, but they are in different columns. Therefore, it's the row number that gets the absolute referencing. So let's go ahead, let me delete these, and we'll create this formula. Alright, so here we go. We're going to take the number of months. And again, because the number of months that we're looking at making our deposits, whether it's for 12 months, 24 months, or 36, they both share, or they all three share the same column heading. I'm going to press the F4 function key until just the column letter has the dollar sign in front of it, times, and then the amount of our deposit. Well, again, all the amount of deposits we're going to be making, or at least possibly making, are in the same row but different columns. We're going to press the F4 function key until just the row number contains the dollar sign. Then I'm going to press the enter key. Then I'm going to go ahead and use that fill handle, and we're going to copy it across. We're going to keep all of this selected and use that fill handle again and go down. Now, anytime I do a type of matrix like this and I use relative cell address or mixed cell addressing here, I like to go to the lower right hand corner and double click just to make sure it's grabbing the correct cells, which you can see it is definitely going to A7 and G4. So I know everything in between is correct. And that is your mixed referencing. So you have three types of cell referencing for formulas as well as functions. You have relative, you have absolute, and then you also have mixed.